After betrayal and infidelity, there is a voice that begins whispering in your ear. You don't expect it to come, but suddenly you might be in the middle of brushing your teeth or making breakfast, and it just whispers saying, you weren't enough. And what's really interesting is that they believe it immediately. There is very little contemplation of the idea. The thought enters their head, you're not enough, and they instantly believe it. And you believe it not because it makes sense, but because you want to believe it. And I'll explain why. When someone betrays you, when someone cheats on you, your brain starts searching for your reasons, not their reasons, your reasons for why it happened. It wants to know what you did wrong. It wants to know what you missed, what you should have been doing that you weren't. It's your brain's way of trying to pretend that it has control over everything. Because if the betrayal was your fault, then you have control. You can prevent it, fix it, make sure it never happens again. Maybe not with this partner, but with the next one. Because if it wasn't your fault, then how in the world are you going to control it? How can you possibly predict it? And especially if their choice seemed random. It was just like this emptiness, this lack, this void. It's just pure chaos. Then you have to sit with something far more disturbing. And it's just that you're vulnerable. You're vulnerable to someone else's actions. You're vulnerable to random suffering in this world. And there was nothing that you could have done differently. And that is a terrifying truth. That is a terrifying reality. So your brain, to try to protect you, chooses a lie. It chooses to believe that you were 100% responsible. So you start saying, if I had been more attractive, more interesting, more sexually available, more sexually satisfying, more emotionally stable, then they wouldn't have left. And that lie, or those sets of lies, those questions, let you keep the illusion of control. But it costs far more than it gives you. It costs the truth of your own worth. And this is only magnified by so much of the advice that you'll see in random self-development circles that talk about the power of taking ownership. They talk about radical ownership, radical accountability, where you say that everything in your life, that's my fault. And it's a very weird perspective to have in light of awful suffering and undeserved pain. And so if you're hearing that, especially while going through this pain, just know that they're lying. Just know that they are not accurately describing the truth. And what makes these ideas, these thoughts that you're not enough so painful is that they're not being created out of nothing. They're not being created from scratch. It activates something that was already there. Some old wound from childhood, a moment when love felt conditional, a moment when you started to equate being chosen with being safe and good enough. Moments when parents or friends were emotionally unavailable, or you felt abandoned, or you learned that affection had to be earned through performance. The betrayal reaches back through the recesses of emotions and thoughts and grabs all of that. And so while you're in this chaotic, vulnerable state, you're not just feeling the pain of this moment, you're feeling 1,000 other pains as well. Suddenly you're dealing with every moment that you felt unworthy, every moment that you felt not enough. And this will show up completely different depending on who you are as a person. For some, it really gravitates toward body shame. Looking in the mirror, thinking about who they chose instead, noticing all of the differences. For others, it's professional overcompensation. You'll throw yourself into work because at least there you can prove that you have value. Or the opposite. Sometimes people will just lose all motivation completely because it feels like nothing matters anymore. Some people just can't tolerate any intimacy anymore after being betrayed. They want to be desired, but they start to feel sick at the idea of being touched. Others become desperate for validation and then hate themselves for needing it. The pattern is different, but the wound is the same. I wasn't enough. And feeling unworthy is ultimately a signal. It's not itself the biggest problem. It's a signal. Your nervous system is trying to communicate with you. Not that you actually lack worth, but there's a part of you that learned to measure your worth based on how other people treated you, and specifically the idea of being chosen. And that part is still operating from that old programming. The feeling of unworthiness isn't proof of anything about your value. It's your system saying there's something here that needs healing. And that healing doesn't happen through logic. You can't think your way out of feeling worthless. You can't just tell yourself one time, I'm enough, and suddenly it's true. And suddenly it feels true. Because the wound isn't in your conscious mind. It's deep in your unconscious, your subconscious. At some point, your brain learned that tying some type of conditionality to feelings of worth was actually a way to get ahead in life. It's in your nervous system, it's in your body. So the real work, the deep work, is about meeting that younger or broken or hurting part of yourself that's panicking. The part that's saying, I knew this would happen. The part that said, I knew they would run away. The part that said, I knew I didn't deserve love. But please remember that that voice isn't you, and you don't have to listen to it. It's an old wound trying to protect you. You don't heal by arguing with it. You heal by actually listening to it, holding it, and showing it something different. That's why real healing doesn't often come from just finding someone new that will treat you better. That's good, and you deserve that. And it doesn't come from just achieving more in your work. It doesn't come from revenge. It comes from reprogramming what safety actually feels like at the neurological level. You consciously know you have worth, but unconsciously you believe the most wild things about yourself. And I can tell you, as someone who has experienced this shift and has helped so many other people make this shift, the way that you feel in your body afterward is night and day. There's a feeling of lightness, of just being able to breathe, of happiness, of a natural, very unassuming kind of confidence that comes with it. And it directly affects the type of behaviors that you're willing to accept and the kind that you're not. Doesn't mean you become rude or arrogant about it, but just knowing what's for you and what isn't. And healing this shame is absolutely necessary to find a partner who will actually treat you well. Because until you do, you're going to keep attracting the same type of people. But in case you're struggling to even begin to believe this, please hear me loud and clear. Your worth was never in their hands. Your worth has never depended on a man or woman's praise, acceptance, or choosing of you. Your value never depended on what your parents thought of you. Your parents never depended on what other people thought of you. You could even argue it's never depended on what you think of you. Beneath all of the illusions, lies, confusions, stories, and traumas, you simply are worthy. And think of this pain as an invitation, because these beliefs, these lies were there the whole time, but the pain is bad enough now. They are actually aware of it and have this opportunity to do deep work and find a deeper level of freedom than ever before. You don't need to develop worth or learn that you have worth. You need to unlearn the lies that have kept you from believing it this whole time. So please don't just stare in a mirror and say, you're enough, you're beautiful each day. I know that every now and then that can help people, but it's more so about figuring out what's stopping me from actually believing this. That's where the work begins. And you know that you've made progress in this when thinking about the affair, you start to see it for what it was. Not evidence of your lack of worth, but as someone else's failure. Nothing more, nothing less. Horrible, evil, painful things just happen, and it's not a reflection of yourself. And you realize that you get to keep going. You get to move past it. Not because you've gotten to some point where you've proven yourself to someone else, but because you finally stopped believing all the lies around this idea of shame and self-worth.